Welcome to our channel, all friends. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe my channel and press the bell icon to stay update for new videos. Thanks. Let's start new video. Suddenly, I heard the sound of the door opening. Engrossed in watching a video, I quickly put my phone aside. My eyes landed on my mother, who was swiftly entering the house. Seeing her, the events of last night replayed in my mind, when I had secretly peeked into her room where, "Sarah, what are you doing here? I've been waiting for you." Lost in my thoughts once again, I was startled by my cousin's voice. For some reason, her interruption irritated me. I glanced at her. She was signaling something with her eyes, something only I could understand. Without hesitation, I turned toward her, and moments later, I was on the rooftop with her. "Your brother has been asking about you for a whole week. He told me that you haven't answered any of his calls or replied to his messages. What's this drama all about? Do you even realize how much he loves you?" Hearing Sarah's words, I felt secretly happy, but I kept a stern expression on my face. I was still upset with Ahmed. It had taken me so long to get the perfect opportunity, yet he hadn't shown up that day, ruining everything. But Sarah didn't know the real reason. She thought we had fought over something trivial. "I don't need you interfering in this matter," I told her. "I'll handle it myself. It's better if you stay out of it." She took a deep breath and left. Now I was standing there all alone. I had barely spent a few moments in solitude when I suddenly felt someone's presence behind me. Turning around, I saw Ahmed standing there. My breath hitched for a moment. I hadn't expected to see him here at all. I quickly looked toward the stairs, fearing that my mother might be there, but the staircase was empty. "What are you doing here?" I stammered. I didn't know why, but whenever I saw him in front of me, I got flustered. Ahmed didn't answer. He just gazed at me intently, making me nervous. Before he could take a step closer, we suddenly heard footsteps climbing the stairs. Panicked, I signaled him to leave, but he didn't move an inch. I reassured him, "Don't worry, I'll call you myself." That was all he needed to hear. In an instant, he leaped over to his own rooftop and disappeared. Moments later, my mother appeared on the rooftop. Seeing her, I hurried downstairs, unable to meet her gaze. The whole day, my mind was occupied with thoughts of Ahmed. Should I call him or not? Deep inside, my heart ached to hear his voice. I hadn't spoken to him for an entire week. But what angered me even more was that in all this time, he hadn't even tried to call me again. Was he testing my patience, or was he doing this deliberately? Whatever the reason, he had succeeded. I had sworn to myself that no matter how much he tried, I wouldn't give in this time. I wouldn't reconcile with him. But the moment he asked, I found myself dialing his number. There was something about him, an irresistible pull that always drew me in. No matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't stop myself. It had been almost 2 months since I had started talking to him. During this time, we had only communicated over the phone. He would talk to me about everything, and at first it felt strange, sometimes even made me angry. But with my parents' increasing strange behavior and my own growing youth, I started getting drawn toward him. Slowly, I got used to it, and soon I lost control over myself. I feared that this restlessness might lead me to not only ruin myself, but also cause a great loss to my family. That's why I distanced myself from him for a while. But that distance didn't last long. I had become so addicted to him that I would count the days until I could see him again. Our meetings were never long, just a couple of minutes. But even those 2 minutes were precious to me. At this stage in life, when emotions run wild, controlling them becomes nearly impossible. For the past 2 weeks, he had been insisting on meeting me alone, somewhere where it would be just the two of us. His demand initially made me angry, but deep down, my own heart started giving in. Eventually, I found the perfect opportunity to meet him, but on that very day, Ahmed let me down. I waited for him all day, but he never came. Later, I found out that one of his friends had met with an accident, and he had to go with him. That made me furious, and I refused to talk to him. But all it took was one apology from him, and I forgave him again. I had completely forgotten how much harm I was bringing upon myself by giving in to him. The intoxication of youth had consumed me. It wouldn't let me rest until I met Ahmed. One day, Ahmed asked me to come with him to a flat. Just hearing the word flat sent a wave of fear through me. I had already heard countless stories of girls being lured to flats by boys, only to be caught and ruined forever. I was terrified of the same happening to us. If we got caught by the police, it wouldn't just be disgraceful. It would also destroy any future I had. I tried hard to convince Ahmed that this was impossible. If I go with you to the flat, I said, I have a bad feeling that we will get ourselves into huge trouble. But he refused to listen. He kept insisting, and eventually he turned the blame on me and got angry. His anger disturbed me deeply. And so one day I made up my mind. I convinced myself that it was just for a short while, so there was no harm in going with him. My mother trusted me completely. Whenever I asked for permission to go somewhere, she would allow me without questioning. This time was no different. When I told her I wanted to visit a friend's house, she agreed instantly. For a brief moment, guilt struck my heart. I thought I shouldn't betray my mother's trust, but the thought only lasted a few seconds before the devil overpowered me again. I told myself that this wasn't such a bad thing. The world has changed. These things are normal now. And besides, Ahmed will marry me anyway. But this was the biggest lie I was telling myself. I didn't know then that a man who seeks fulfillment of his desires in secrecy, without forming any real commitment, can never truly be a woman's support. Nor can he ever accept her completely. Because deep in his heart, he will always believe that if she did this with him, she must have done the same with someone else too. At that moment, I was completely intoxicated by the thrill of youth. After a short while, I reached the main square and stood there, waiting. Suddenly, a black car stopped right in front of me. I instinctively took a step back in fear, but as soon as I saw the person inside, a smile spread across my face. It was none other than Ahmed. He kept smiling at me, but today there was a strange sparkle in his eyes, as if he was about to achieve something he had long desired. I ignored all these thoughts and reassured myself once again that nothing bad would happen. Everything would be fine. Then I got into the car with him. As soon as I sat down, Ahmed quickly turned on the music. The song playing was vulgar and inappropriate, making my face flush with embarrassment. When Ahmed glanced at me, he looked surprised at first, but then burst into laughter. His laughter only made me feel even more self-conscious. Once he was done laughing, he teasingly said, "You got shy over such a small thing? There's still so much more I need to tell you and show you." His words made my heart pound, and an uneasy feeling settled over me. A strange restlessness took hold of my entire being, making me shift uncomfortably in my seat. Suddenly, Ahmed grabbed my hand. The moment his fingers touched mine, it felt as if an electric current ran through my whole body. I quickly pulled my hand away. A shadow passed over Ahmed's face. He clearly did not like my reaction. However, he didn't say anything. Instead, he pressed his foot harder on the accelerator, making the car speed up. With every passing moment, as we got closer to our destination, my uneasiness grew. Throughout the drive, he continued saying strange and unsettling things, making me even more anxious. A little while later, the car came to an abrupt stop in front of an old, worn-out building. It looked abandoned, eerie. For a brief moment, a thought flashed through my mind. I still had time to turn around and run away. But just then, I heard my name being called. I quickly turned to look at Ahmed. He was calling my name with such tenderness, asking me to come with him. "You have no idea how long I have waited for this moment," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "I love you so much. And today, the time has finally come for me to have my love." The intoxicating sweetness of his words, the passion in his tone, ensnared me completely. I forced a small smile and then took his hand, following him into the building. But something was making me very uneasy. The way the people in the building and those lingering nearby were staring at us. Their gazes were strange, knowing, almost mocking. It felt like they could tell exactly why we were here. I mentioned it to Ahmed, but he reassured me. "Ignore all of this," he said. "Nothing like that will happen inside the flat." His words made me blush. The embarrassment and nervousness I had been feeling just moments ago suddenly vanished, replaced by the intoxicating excitement of youth. I could hardly wait for what was to come. Ahmed led me inside the flat and asked me to wait in a room, promising he would be back shortly. I sat there impatiently waiting for him. After a few minutes, he finally returned, smiling at me. Seeing him, I lowered my gaze, suddenly feeling shy. Before he could come closer or say anything, His phone rang. At first, he ignored the call and declined it. But when the phone rang again and again, he grew frustrated and finally answered it. I watched his face closely. His expression changed rapidly. His skin went pale and then flushed red. It was clear something was very wrong. He looked extremely worried as soon as he hung up the phone. I impatiently asked him who had called. Hearing my question, he became even more anxious and said, "Chandni, forgive me. I don't want to upset you, but I have no choice now." From his words, I already knew that something else had come up for him. Frustrated, I shook his hand off and turned to leave. He stopped me and began pleading, "Chandni, please try to understand this is really important. If I don't go now, those people will kill me. My life is in your hands now, and besides, these moments will keep coming. I promise I will bring you back here tomorrow." I took a deep breath and said, "Duhin, fine, no problem. I'll talk to you when I get home." Saying this, I walked out of the flat with him. He offered to drop me home, but at that moment, I was so furious that I didn't even want to see his face. He had shattered all my hopes. I couldn't control my emotions. So I hailed a rickshaw and went home. But as soon as I saw my mother, my anger flared up again. I took out all my frustration on my family because of Ahmed. In the evening, Sarah came over to see me, but I treated her so rudely that she left, heartbroken. Everyone was worried, wondering what had suddenly happened to me. Meanwhile, Ahmed kept calling me, but I refused to answer a single call. I had decided that I would never speak to him again. But that decision only lasted for a few days. On the fifth day, I finally picked up his call. I had planned to give him a piece of my mind, to tell him to stay away from me forever. But the moment I heard his sweet, soft words, I melted again. Within minutes, I forgave him. Ahmed asked me to meet him again. This time, I sarcastically replied, "What's the point? If I come to meet you again, you'll probably have another urgent matter to attend to." Hearing this, he burst into laughter and said, "You're in such a hurry to meet me, aren't you?" I understood his teasing tone immediately. His words made me fall silent. For some reason, I felt as if he was shifting all the blame onto me, as if I was the one eager to meet him, while he was only doing it to keep me happy. I was angry at him, but I was also weak in front of my own desires. And so, once again, we planned to meet the next day, to finish what we had started. After talking to him, I lay back down to sleep, but now sleep had abandoned me. I just wanted morning to come quickly. I had no idea how terrible a person he truly was. The blindfold of love covered my eyes, but it was about to be removed the next day, along with the end of my happiness. When I couldn't fall asleep, despite trying, I sat up on my bed and then went to the rooftop. It was midnight. I saw that the light in the rooftop room was on. I realized that my parents were still awake. I took a deep breath and went back downstairs. But now my mind kept replaying the incident that had led me into all of this. I couldn't stop feeling angry at my parents. But in reality, my parents were not at fault. It was my own curiosity and recklessness that led me into this mess, and now I was paying the price. In fact, it would be more accurate to say that I was already suffering, and my family was about to suffer soon. And then, the morning sun rose. That day, I was extremely happy, and my happiness was evident on my face. Everyone kept asking me the reason behind my joy, but I would just smile in response because I couldn't tell them anything about it. The fear I had felt before, the guilt of doing something wrong, all those thoughts had vanished from my mind. Now I only had one thing in mind. I wanted to be with Ahmed as soon as possible. He was a 20-year-old young man, while I was just 17 at the time. At such a young age, I had fallen into this dangerous trap. That day, I made an excuse and went out with Ahmed again, but this time he didn't take me to the apartment. Instead, he told me that one of his friend's farmhouses was empty and he would take me there. As soon as I heard the word farmhouse, an unsettling fear gripped my heart. I had always been scared of such isolated places, and on top of that, I had a strong feeling that something bad was going to happen. Whenever I had a bad feeling, things always turned out just as I had feared. And this time was no different. When Ahmed brought me to the farmhouse, he suddenly left, telling me he would be back in a little while. But an hour passed, and he still hadn't returned. The only person with me was a maid. When I asked her about Ahmed, she gave me a strange look and said, Didn't you come here for Arsalan Babu? Her words felt like a thunderbolt striking me. For a moment, I couldn't believe what she had said. I quickly shook my head in denial and told her, "No, I came here with Ahmed." Hearing this, she smirked sarcastically and said, "What difference does it make? This man will fulfill your purpose as well. Just stand here and wait. Even I'm just waiting for you all to finish your business so I can go home." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. A few moments later, another young man entered the house. He looked around 24 or 25 years old. As soon as he saw me, he smirked and then signaled to the maid. The maid grabbed my arm and started dragging me toward a room. I desperately tried to free myself, but it was too late. Ahmed had betrayed me. And then everything happened that I had never even imagined in my worst nightmares. In the name of love, I had made the biggest mistake of my life, and now I was facing its devastating consequences. I cried and begged, but nothing changed. The man threw some money at me and sent me away. I had lost everything with my own hands. The saddest part was that I had known all along what I was getting myself into. I was well aware of why I was going to that farmhouse. The only difference was that I had wanted to do it willingly with Ahmed, believing it was love. But that man did the same thing forcefully to me. That day, I realized something. A sin is a sin, no matter what name you give it. The sins we commit in the name of love may feel pleasurable, but we cover them with the illusion of affection and romance. I remained in shock for nearly 2 months. And then, 2 months later, I received another devastating piece of news. I was pregnant with that stranger's child. I didn't know what to do. When I told him about it, he completely refused to help me. Now I had nothing left but regret, sorrow, and endless tears. I cried and begged for Allah's forgiveness. But this was the punishment for my own actions. And then a time came when my Allah showed mercy upon me and forgave me. Without a doubt, He is the one who forgives all sins. The man who had wronged me one day came to me himself and asked for my forgiveness. I didn't know how he had found me, but perhaps guilt had consumed him, and he wanted to atone for his sin. Meanwhile, Ahmed, he never even looked back to check on me, not even once. That man's name was Wahid. He came from a respectable family, but due to bad company, he had lost his way. He promised me that he would marry me soon. At that time, I was only a few weeks into my pregnancy. And then, within just a week, he married me. Since he belonged to an influential family, my parents quickly accepted his proposal and arranged our marriage. Within a few days, we were married. After our wedding, I tried multiple times to ask him why he had suddenly decided to marry me, when he once didn't even want to see my face. But he never answered this question. Instead, whenever I brought it up, he would apologize and say, "It's all Allah's will. You never know when He chooses to guide someone. Just think of it as Him guiding me. I want to leave my past behind." Hearing this, I chose to remain silent. I was happy that he had found the right path. And along with him, I too had changed for the better. I made a promise to myself that I would never repeat my past mistakes again and that I would raise my children with good values. Parents should also be careful about their actions in front of their young children and remain mindful of their presence.